Welcome Abiturenten to this first of Learneezee's videos, English for the Abitur. And today we're going to look at the ambiguity of belonging. So as you know, this is one of the most important themes in the Abitur. What does belonging mean? How is it reflected in the book, Crooked Letter, and the film, Gran Torino? And today we're going to have a look at this theme in more detail. And if you get something out of this video, then please subscribe. And if you're interested in doing some lessons, then please go to learneezee.com and you can register your interest for an individual lesson or for a group class. So let's begin. The ambiguity of belonging. So the first thing to realize is that belonging is a term that is strongly connected to place, and the place where we grow up or the place we live has a big influence on our identity and how we understand our role in the world. And so we see this in both the film and the book. So in the book, Chabot is the location where most of the action takes place in Crooked Letter. And it's interesting to think about how the place has an impact on the identity of the main characters. So Chabot is a small town, it's very poor, it's in Mississippi in the deep south of the United States. And we obviously know that the southern states experienced a lot more racial divide or racial tension over their history. And so we see some of those factors playing out in the book. And they have a big impact on the identity of the characters, especially Silas, but also Larry. And also in Gran Torino, the city of Detroit has a big impact on especially Walt's identity. So Detroit was a major manufacturing center in the industrial north. Cars were produced there along with many other products. And it's this manufacturing tradition that to a large part influences Walt's idea of the American dream, that America became strong through its ability to build things and make things, and that in turn created jobs and allowed the average American to basically have a good life. But of course, with the loss of those manufacturing jobs to other countries, for example, China or Japan, Detroit has also lost a lot of its power as a city. And we see in Walt's experience a typical experience of people who grew up in this period of American history when manufacturing was strong and jobs were plentiful, and it was a time when people could work hard and have a good life. So the place we belong to influences us a lot, and it's important in how we understand ourselves in the world. Now, if we look at the concept of belonging, we can see first of all that it's about ownership. So an object can belong to me, but I can also belong to a group or belong to a culture. And here I've given you an example of someone who belongs to a football club. Now, of course, the football club doesn't own you, but in belonging, there's always a kind of exchange of expectations. So belonging to something always equals a set of expectations. Your expectations on what you want to get from belonging to this group, status, security, friendship, there could be many things. And also the group has expectations about what you have to give to them. Sometimes that's an actual cost, for example, when you join a fitness studio. But more often than not, we're talking about expectations connected with behavior or values or ways of dressing or speaking or acting in the world. So to belong to a group, there involves always this two-way exchange. And within this exchange, there is always some kind of ambiguity. So ambiguity literally means that there are different ways to interpret something. So this is a classic example of an ambiguous picture. Is it a duck? Is it a rabbit? Or is it maybe both? What do you see when you look at this image? So how you maybe look at the image changes the way you interpret it. If you focus on one part of the image, you may see more of a duck or more of a rabbit. Or maybe you can see both at the same time. So the ambiguity of belonging means that each individual will have a different interpretation of what the expectations are and whether they are worthwhile or not. Is it worthwhile paying the cost for membership to the group to get the benefits of the group? And what are those benefits? Each person values those benefits differently. So belonging in English is often talked about in terms of a sense of belonging, a feeling of belonging. So belonging means to be part of something. That's clear, right? But these different groups have different expectations. And remember, we can belong to different groups at the same time. And it could be that many of those groups have expectations which conflict with each other. So we may have to, balance those expectations from those different groups. For example, your national culture may have different expectations to your regional culture or to your community culture. And how you deal with those different expectations will influence how you perceive yourself, where you feel most comfortable, or with which group you identify the most. And there's always groups that we join voluntarily, so probably those groups have benefits that outweigh the disadvantages, right? So if we join a group voluntarily, it probably means that we see a lot of value in it. But many other groups we're born into and we don't have any choice. And so there's a lot more potential for conflict. For example, a family. You don't get to choose your family. And it may be that your personal view of life differs from the family or the culture into which you're born. So there are many upsides to belonging, but there are also many downsides. And here is the gray area of expectation and the ambiguity of deciding whether there are more upsides or downsides and how you interpret those. So I've got a nice quote here from a website, a psychology website, about many of the upsides. So a sense of belonging is a human need. Just like the need for food and shelter, feeling that you belong is most important in seeing value in life and in coping with intensely painful emotions. So belonging helps us to cope with life. If we didn't belong, we would find it very difficult to deal with life's difficult times. So we get a lot of support and security. Some find belonging in a church, some with friends, some with family, some on social media. Some see themselves connected only to one or two people. Others believe and feel a connection to all people in the world, to humanity. Some struggle to find a sense of belonging, and their loneliness is physically painful for them. But in all concepts of belonging, there's always this sense of a human need. It's a need, it's a basic need of people to belong. And in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is what we're looking at here, Maslow was a psychologist, and he theorized that all humans need certain things, and that once we've satisfied our basic needs, for example, physiological needs, food and water, and we feel safe, then the next level of needs involves love, relationship, and belonging. And Maslow believed that all humans are searching for these, for ways in which they can satisfy these needs. And the extension of this is that these needs are what motivate us in life. They also give us resilience, and when we meet these needs, we feel supported and fulfilled, and they contribute to our identity. So belonging is a critical and foundational idea for life in the world. But unfortunately, there are many downsides to belonging. One of the first ones that comes to my mind is that when we belong to a group, our in-group, it often means that we exclude others. So part of establishing an in-group, my group that I belong to, often means identifying others as not part of the group. And we often feel that the group that we belong to is better than these others. So the other, or the stranger, becomes something that we are perhaps suspicious of, or something that we use as a way to make our group seem better or stronger or more intelligent, perhaps. So belonging has this ambiguous nature. It's not just about my group, but it also involves belittling sometimes, or denigrating, or having a negative attitude to others. The second point is that we can't always choose the group we belong to. I said this before, we can't really choose our family, our culture, our tradition, our gender, right? These things are determined for us. And it could be that these groups that we find ourselves belonging to don't fit with our own view of life. And so we may feel limited, or we may feel repressed, or we may feel uncomfortable with the groups that we're born into and that we belong to from a very early age. And of course, many people go through a period of rebellion in which they want to break away from those traditional groups that they belong to and find new groups that better reflect their view of life. A third point is that membership of a group always has a cost. And that cost may be physical. You have to pay money, or you have to look a certain way, or perform certain traditions or rituals to belong to that group. Or it may be what we say in English, intangible. So not physical, but it may be about attitudes, or views of life, the values you have. And so there'll always be some kind of pressure to behave a certain way, or take on a certain way of acting in the world. And each individual obviously has to weigh up, is this cost to be a member of a group worth it? Or is this pressure to follow a certain behavior in life limiting? And so obviously in this group, there is a way of appearing in the world, which is very important. And I'm sure if you tried to become a member of this group wearing a suit, you would have a lot of difficulty, right? You have to take on the visual appearance of the group to belong to it. And that may be attractive in the beginning, but it may become limiting later on. So the cost is very important. Is it worth it? Is the value of belonging to the group worth the cost? A fourth point is that when you're not accepted, when you try to become a member of a group the way perhaps Larry did in Crooked Letter, it hurts when you're not accepted, right? It hurts when you're rejected, because our need for belonging is so strong that when we're rejected from a group, we take it very personally, and it can be extremely lonely to be excluded from a group. So belonging to a group carries with it the risk of exclusion. And that's ambiguous in itself, because often we want to belong to a group for the security that we get from having friends or from having people we can rely on. But that comes along with the negative concept of risk. We could be excluded if we don't meet the requirements of the group enough. It could also be that we, want to leave the group because we feel limited. And this is obviously a situation that many people experience in the world. They leave their home culture or their home country, they journey across the world, and they find themselves in another culture, and they feel lost. So if you belong to a group and then you leave it, maybe because you feel limited, you feel repressed, you're looking for something else in the world, there's always the danger of losing your way or feeling lost, not knowing who you are. And so groups also carry this risk, or belonging to groups, that when we leave, we feel alone or lost or without any center that we can believe in or rely on. So this is another kind of ambiguous idea, that belonging to a group has this dark side, you might say, that it can limit us, that we can be excluded, or that if we do decide to leave, we may actually go through a lot of pain as we try to find out who we are again and find a new group to belong to. So we see that, as I said, in the sort of challenges of globalization and immigration, and people who move from one country to another country and find themselves in this conflict between their traditional identity and their traditional culture and their sense of belonging to those ideas and the new culture they find themselves in. So Tao is a good example of this in Gran Torino. He's looking for a group to belong to. He belongs to his family and his tradition, but he feels conflicted because he also realizes that he needs to find a place in American culture. And of course, it's Walt who comes to his aid and shows him the way to, or one way that he can belong to American culture, through work. And of course, that connects strongly with Walt's concept of American culture, that it's built on this idea of hard work, and Tao also experiences that and gets value from it. So those are just a few ideas about the sense of belonging. And I'll just finish with this one last idea. Walt also loses his sense of belonging, not because he's immigrated to a new country, but because the country he lives in has changed. or at least for him, doesn't represent the America he grew up in and the America that gave him a sense of pride and a sense of value in his life. And so he is also struggling to understand where he belongs. And interestingly, he, of course, finds a sense of belonging again with an immigrant family who have a very different set of values to him, really, but they find some common ground. And in that common ground, he again sees something of value. So another ambiguity of belonging may be that we can find belonging in places which we perhaps never thought we would. So it has this perhaps sometimes a mysterious quality to it, belonging. So to sum up, there are many positives and there are many negatives to belonging. I've created a summary here. And in your preparation for the Abitur, it would be a really good idea to stop and think about the different characters and what are their relationships to belonging. What kind of process do they go through? So think about the characters in Crooked Letter, and of course the main characters in Gran Torino as well. What positive and negative experiences do they have when they try to belong, or in their search for belonging, or in the conflicts that occur because they're not sure if they belong? So if you're interested in doing some more work in your preparation for the Abitur, then please have a look at our website. We offer individual and group classes, and you can register your interest over the website. And if you like this video or got some value from it, then please hit the subscribe button below. And I look forward to seeing you next time in the next episode of English for the Abitur. Bye for now.